Guys, another episode of the Gospel of Fire, and I got an OG today, baby. What up, Stitch? How you doing?
What's going on, Elliot? Good seeing you, bro.
You too, man. How's it going out there in Vegas?
Hey, man, I tell you what, bro. I rolled the dice moving over here 26 years ago, and it paid off. It's the only time I gamble, but here I
am. You moved to the city of gambling without gambling. I like it.
Hey, let me see. I think in all the fights I've worked with you and the shows we've been in together, this is the most I've heard you speak. You know, it was always you and Matt Brown that were the quiet ones, you know. Those are the guys I always had a lot of respect for because, man, you turn on the switch like that and you're the fire marshal.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. You know, it's the fight game. I always like to talk to people like you in the fight game because, like, you've seen so many iterations of it: boxing, early MMA, later stage MMA, now where we are now, plus back to boxing, you know. And you know, everyone knows the podcast is called The Gospel of Fire. And I was watching what was I watching? I was watching the Kings on Showtime. Have you seen that documentary about Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard,
Hagler, and Hearns?
Yeah.
What an era. And what, you know, I used to work with Mike McCallum.
Okay.
One of the guys that I work with here, but he was a guy that was trained by Emmanuel Stewart, and these guys didn't want to fight because Mike was the body snatcher. And I told Mike just the other day in the gym, I said, you know, Mike, as a trainer, I learned so much off of you on natural skills, and Johnny Tapia off of setting up techniques.
Okay.
And, Mike McCallum was they didn't need him.
Yeah, and one of the things that you know, I think he was on that documentary. I'm not sure. I think like they mentioned him.
Yeah.
One of the things that Teddy Atlas says is on there that really stuck with me was, and I might butcher it a little bit. He was like, you know, everyone's got to go through this process of finding out who they are in life, like going into the fire. A fight, the ring, puts that shit on hyperdrive. You know, you find out real fast.
Yeah, you know, and you're absolutely right. That's why I have so much respect for you guys as fighters, win or lose. That's not even the thing. Kevin Kelly was a great boxer. I remember he said a quote, and I'll never forget. He says, when fighters fight, their souls touch. And, you know, somebody like you know, you could verify that. You know, that's crossing the line and getting into the fire. I mean, a lot of respect for you guys.
So how did this start for you? Like, where did your journey in the fight game begin?
You know, Elliot, I got a great story, man. I got a great storyline, and I've written a book called From the Fields to the Garden. I grew up as a farm worker, literally in the Central Valley of California, which is the agricultural capital of the world. So I was born and raised in a migrant camp. I mean, my address is CPC number 12, California Packing Company. So I grew up under those conditions all my life, right? But baseball was what we played. And my goal was to become a professional baseball player, of course. And played 4 years of varsity third base. And I walked on to the college by our town. I grew up in a town. I was born and raised in the migrant camp. In the second grade, I moved to Planada, which I always put on my collar. So when you see the big fight, you see Planada, that's my hometown. It's like 1,500 people, all farm workers. But yeah, I walked down to Merced College. Didn't have a car; it was 9 miles away, and I would stay after practice or after school and practice, and I'd have to hitchhike back. And so I went to the recruiter. 1972, April went into the Air Force, and in 1974 they stationed me in a place called Thailand. I mean, I don't even think you were born in 1974.
Not yet.
So, but I always told myself if I went to the Orient, I'd want to study the martial arts. You know, Bruce Lee was big during that era. And they sent me to Thailand, and I had friends that were already stationed there for like 2-3 months. You know, they were there ahead of me. So they knew the area. They took me downtown to Banshan to see some fights. And, you know, being Mexican, I'm thinking boxing all the way, right? Well, it's Muay Thai. And these guys are fighting, and guy throws a kick and knocks the guy out. And I said, man, I'm in, you know. So on the base, the following Monday, I walk onto the base, and the Koreans are teaching Taekwondo. Well, Taekwondo Thailand is a young Mexican kid that don't know shit. is the same to me, Thai, right? But so we did that with a gi for about 3 months, and which turned out to be good. Then the Koreans left, Duran, and the Thais took over in the program and transitioned us into the Muay Thai system. But see, I already had legs like Taekwondo, right? So I had powerful legs already, and just to get into that system was awesome. But yeah, that's how I got started and came back to the States and went to King's Gym in Oakland to get into boxing just to improve my hands, and started training fighters from there, amateur boxers, and opened up my own school of kickboxing with just a credit card, ASK, the American School of Kickboxing, and started training fighters and had kids and adults, and I was a good trainer. I promoted fights, I managed, I did everything, right? But I like being a cutman, and I worked for RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company for like 23 years. I put in for a job transfer. Finally, it came, man, and they gave me 1 week, and I sold them into 2 weeks, man. In 2 weeks, I swear, Elliot, I gave my school to a student. I sold my house, put my family in a U-Haul, and drove 9 hours to Las Vegas. And then I took a $25,000 a year cut and pay to do what I did. And my wife supported me, my family supported me, and then it was only boxing, and of course, the UFC came around, and that really kind of changed my whole life. And but yeah, I crossed that fire, as you say, man. Walked into that fire. And
what was that thought process like there? Like, that's a $25,000. What year are we talking?
Hey, man, that was when 85.
So yeah, $25,000. We're talking almost like $100,000.
It was like 40% of my pay.
Yeah,
and but my wife believed in me, and yeah, I made a sacrifice, and was I scared? Yeah, of course I was scared, and I remember we stopped in Bakersfield and spent the night, and just as an omen, cops had shot a guy on the streets. There was something had happened, and the guy was dead right there. Right, we're checking into the motel, and I'm thinking, oh wow. So, but yeah, I came here with just expectations to be a cut man, and I didn't come to be a trainer, though I trained a lot of good fighters. I was a very good trainer, and I came here just to do cuts. But then I saw these guys training, and I'm thinking, well, I could do that, and I could do that, and I used to do pads. I was very good at pads. So being that I had an 8 to 5 job, I couldn't give you 150% of my time to be a full trainer. So I would kind of sneak off of work and go to the gym and pad guys out, and I've done pads for Mike Tyson, Johnny Tapia, Mike McCallum, Russians. They would come, and I would just do it because I enjoyed it. And then the UFC came around, and shit, that's where I met you.
Yeah, but you were a cut man before the UFC, right? Or did it start?
Yeah, yes. When I moved to Las Vegas, and let's see, I guess 85, right?
Okay.
And I knew Dana in the gyms. Dana was patting guys out, executives and housewives and executives' wives and all that shit, right? We were working A-level fighters. I don't think Dana ever worked the A-level fight ever.
It's crazy that it worked out for him, because that's where he was, right? Like that. I mean,
well, I remember him at the boxing events, boxing shows, right? Hell, he'd be sitting next to Lorenzo Fertitta,
Yeah.
Lorenzo at that time was with the commission, so yeah, he hooked up with the right people and got him where he's at.
Yeah,
so,
no, made it for sure.
But in all fairness, Ali, he's the one, got to give him props for, he's the one that brought me in, and how that scenario started is I was working K1 at the Bellagio, Scott Coker, and a lot of my fighters always fought for Scott Coker. I don't know if you remember Dennis Alexio. Dennis Alexio I worked with Dennis until you guys came around, was the best athlete I ever worked with. Tremendous athlete, tremendous kickboxer, just powerful legs. And when he saw me kicking, I walk into the gym just back in, moved to Fairfield, and I'm kicking the bag, and he's training there, and he kind of stops and, damn, this guy's kicking the bag a little different than a lot of other guys. So that's how we met, and that's how I started working with Dennis. So yeah, I've had a great career. Dana called me. I was at the K1. I think Bob Sapp was fighting chemo, and Dana hit me up for my card and called me and said, "Hey, look, we bought the UFC, and would you be interested in being a cutman?" That time it was just Leon Taps, the cutman for Bernard Hopkins, the original, the godfather of cutman. And yeah, it was a great opportunity. I quit watching the UFC, Elliot, because the rules were there were no rules. And me being a martial artist, kind of look at that etiquette, right? But then Dana says that they had implemented X amount of rules, like 30-something rules, and that caught my interest. And yeah, I joined up, and that's what we did. We're here.
How did you learn this craft of Cutman, and what made you want to learn this craft, right? Because it's not a craft you think about, right? Like I can remember so one of the first times you and I met, and you might not remember it because I was not in the UFC yet.
Yeah.
We were in Japan, and Dwayne Ludwig was fighting Genki Sudo, and Josh Barnett had flown you out just to wrap his hands and work the corner for cuts. And I was like, and I was super young, and I was like, oh, that's Stitch. Yeah. Maybe I'm gonna go ask that guy if he's got extra time, and Josh said no. Josh is like, no, I paid him. He's here for me.
It's funny you know that story because I know that story not about, but on my side, right? And so you saw that. And I remember Josh. Josh called me. Great guy. Man. I love Josh. I always talk about him. He falls on top of my list of good people. But he brought me in. He said, Stitch, how much would you charge to go to Japan with me? And I give him my price. And when I got there, guys wanted me to wrap their hands, right? And Josh, no. He goes, I pay to bring him in. If you want him to wrap your hands, $500. He was my agent.
Yeah.
I'd make $2-3 grand extra, bro. I remember the first time, I can't remember what Japanese guy wrapped, but they give you money in envelopes, right?
Right.
So then I put it in my pocket like I'm a badass dude, right? Shit, I walked to the bathroom like I'm going pee, and I open it up. It was like $700. So Josh did that. Now I'll give you a story. One I tell all the time is Fedor Emelianenko. Okay. How I became friends with Fedor Emelianenko. So Fedor had just come back from breaking his thumb.
Okay.
And the promoter came and asked me if I could wrap his hands. And Fedor and Josh are friends anyway, but I didn't even ask for money, bro. Fedor was Fedor, the god, right? So I'd work with the Klitschko's other Russians, so I know their personalities, but I go in the dressing room and I start wrapping Fedor's hands. And, I wrap their hands. I always talk to you, relax you, shoot the shit and all that. Fedor saying yes, no. No. So I understand, finally I finished wrapping his hands and I say, okay, Fedor, how do they feel? He goes, super. No, that's all he said. Man, I walked out. My feet weren't even touching the ground. This is Fedor at his highest, right?
Yeah.
And I think he might have fought Mark Hunt. And anyway, Josh and I are walking back on the hallway towards the bus, and he had just won. So he calls us in, and Placebo, we have shots of vodka, man, with Fedor.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, no, but let me add to that, man. Hold on, give me a second. That's cool, but hold on, man. All right, Elliot, when I work with you guys, there's certain relationships. I tell people now, it's not about the world title fights no more. I've done hundreds and hundreds. It's about the characters that I work with. So with that episode with Fedor, I did his brother, Alexander, the gangster wrapped his hands in affliction, and they would ask for me, right? So I knew I had their respect. And when you get the Russians' respect, you're a pretty bad dude, Sure. So, every time he fought, I always wrapped his hands and what have you not. And so the last show I did with Bellator, it was in San Jose. I get to the hotel. I get off the cab and I walk into the lobby, and Fedor's there with his people. And he comes up to me, bro, and he gives me a hug. He says, hey, I have sweats for you. I said, no shit, So send a guy up there. But look, I got to show you, man. Bro.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
Look, how many guys I have? Look at this.
Oh, damn. That's hot.
It's hot, bro.
Yeah.
Look at this. Let me see here. The official Fedor outfit, man.
That's really cool.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's sick, man.
And
coming from Fedor was special, right. Because these are, you make your outfits, he made them in Russia.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was thinking about me when he was in Russia.
When you weren't, yeah, you weren't around. It's like,
I'm not even part of the team, bro.
Yeah.
I just wrap his hands and I take care of him. And I remember when he got knocked out. Who knocked him out? There's so many fights, but he got knocked out. I'm looking at him and he's like this. I said, Fedor, look at me, man. Look at me. You got knocked out. And he understood.
Yeah.
And,
you're one of I'm gonna ask the question I asked a second ago, but you brought this up. So when somebody does lose, you're one of the first people in there, right? It's like you and the doctor, and depending on the corner you're working. What's that like for you from your experience when you got to break that to somebody that you're holding their head or sitting them up, whatever it is, what's that like for you on the Cutman side? Because God, fighting is so intense, and I don't care who you are. If you're sitting ringside and you're in this fight, it's intense.
Yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you because I think you're the only real fighter I've spoken to in interviews.
Okay.
So, but one of the things that I take so much pleasure in is getting into your heart and soul. See, that's one of the things that you guys open up for me, and all this. So, psychology for me is big. It's big for me and it's big for you. I understand that, and like I tell the current fighters now, but I've always did it. But Lyoto Machida explained it when he fought Rashad Evans for the world title.
Okay.
I knew Lyoto from Japan. I'd wrap his hands in Japan with Josh and all that. So we had that history. So I would always take care of Lyoto here. But you remember his father, very proud.
Yeah.
He's very, very proud. And he beats Rashad, and I go in the dressing room and I want to congratulate him. And I say, Lyoto, congratulations, so. He says in front of his father, Stitch, in the ring, you are my father. And, that kind of hit home because I think that's the way I am. In fact, I am with you guys. Whether you're a 4-rounder, whether it's a championship fight, I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. And that's what I let people know. So in the boxing aspect, Vladimir Klitschko, all right, see how we get into your minds. I got stories with all these guys, but Klitschko, when he fought Anthony Joshua, his last fight, 90,000 people, Wembley Stadium. I see him at the weigh-ins because my daughter had got married in Crete Wednesday, and I flew to London Thursday night and then saw him at the weigh-ins Friday. But I put my hand on his shoulder based on what Lyoto had told me. I said, look, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. And I leave, right? Man, here I'm putting the Vaseline on him right before Michael Buffer does the announcements. And we're this far apart, man. And he says, I don't know where. You could call me son. And, bro, you know what that means. I mean, to have gotten into his mind, you've been there. You would understand what that feels like.
Well, you want no one around you that isn't when you're fighting. You don't want you don't want no bullshit around you. You can't handle drama. You can't handle the pettiness sometimes of even your own life, right? Like all of our lives can be so petty. The things that make us upset or we talk about or whatever. But when it's time for that, when and it's what Teddy Atlas was saying, right? Like it puts just your self-discovery on hyperdrive because it's so intense and you can't handle someone who isn't calm, isn't caring, and isn't really psychologically strong around you. So I think that's where, I don't know, from my perspective, that's how I always saw it, was like, I don't want some newcomer who's going to come in here and fucking talk to me about like, I'm scared of shit right now. We're all scared of shit.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that, and that's a great analogy. That's why it's good talking to you. Might be a good remedy for both of us because now I understand your side, right?
Yeah.
And now you're understanding my side. But that's what makes it special, man. And I remember I got a story. Good. I got a shitload of stories.
Yeah,
right?
Let's go. Tell them all.
We're talking about Matt Brown, right? And Matt Brown fought Drago. What the hell was Drago?
Pete Cell.
And I was working with Pete, right, with Drago. And Matt they stopped the fight. He was getting pummeled, right? Mm-hmm. And he's arguing with the doctor and the ref and all that. And no, I'm okay. And I come up to him. I said, Drago, look at me. You got knocked out. He says, Stitch, I believe. I thought that was great, man.
Everyone else he's arguing with. You, okay, I believe.
Yeah, Stitch, I believe. Right.
Right.
And so, man, I tell you, lovely stories like this with. For me, they're priceless.
Well,
And
because they're so intense, right? It's
intense,
you never forget who's with you in the most intense moments of your life.
yeah.
Like yesterday, last 4th of July, watching fireworks, it's not that fucking intense. So you don't remember. Yesterday, I remember. But walking to a cage, about to scrap, exactly where everyone was and everyone who was with you. You don't forget these things.
No, and let me give you another story on bravery of you guys. All right. Corey Hill fought Dale Hart, and he threw a kick. Dale Hart blocked it and broke his leg, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Man, I run in the ring and I get down on my knees and I put his shoulder in my head and his head on my hands. I'm holding him. I'm on my knees. I'm on the ground. And he's screaming in pain, man. Oh, Stitch. Oh, what happened? What happened? And, man, I look down at his leg. His leg goes this way and his foot is going this way.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, Corey, look, man, you broke your leg. Scream as loud as you want. It's okay. Scream, it's okay. And he's talking about my father. And so Don House, I tell, go get his father, and he's in pain. And they shoot him up with morphine and they put him on the stretchers to take him out, but show you the heart of the warrior, bro. Never forget, man. He looks at me and he's morphed up already, right? Okay, feels no fucking pain.
Yeah.
It's Stitch. I almost had him. Bro, what kind of heart is that, man?
Yeah.
But who would understand that besides you, right?
You got to fight. Yeah. It's that thing, and that's what part of the podcast is when we get on here and we talk about fighting and tell stories it's like, relating it to the normal, everyday average person. So that, because we're all fighting something.
Yes.
Right. Like everyone's got to fight today. Some of us, it's, getting out of bed and so hearing stories of other people overcoming it's one of the most tried and true ways to inspire other people,
Yeah.
So I asked it earlier and I got sidetracked, but I'm going to ask it again here. How did Cutman hand wrapper become a thing, right? Like, how did you go, yeah, I'm going to get good at this? And what was that process like of getting good at dealing with cuts, because there's a skill to it. This is a fucking art. Yes. And so is wrapping hands. It's an art. So to the point where, I don't know, you got people flying you around the world and $700 to wrap someone's hands. So, right. Like, yeah. I mean, it takes 20 minutes. So,
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, man, that's right. I got some money. I got 5 guys I can wrap because I do it in a UFC fight. I would do it anyway.
Right.
So I was accustomed to wrapping hands.
Right.
And, but
so what was that process like? How did this become a thing for Stitch?
Well, I had my school of kickboxing. Well, step back when I lived in Oakland, I got into amateur boxing. I trained, not to fight, I just trained because I had an 8 to 5 job. I've got a family and all that. I went to just hone in on my skills, but there I started training amateur boxers, and actually we had the first Golden Glove fighters out of there. But I remember I'm working my first amateur fight. Show you how green I am. And I'm over there and I'm going like this and I'm going like this. And this old veteran trainer comes up to me and he's laughing, man. He goes, relax. A minute is a long time. Man, I'm like a buzzsaw, man. I'm doing this and he says, and then he's laughing because everybody's watching me. And so that was a valuable lesson, right? But I trained them. Then I had my school of kickboxing, and I trained the fighters. I managed them. I even promoted some fights at the base with the Air Force Base and the college. And but being a Cutman, wrapping hands was one of the things I wanted to learn for economics, and then plus expand my skills. So, but keep in mind, Elliot, in those days, the only sport that was out there was boxing, and these old veteran boxing guys, to them it was a secret. Right. But in the dressing room, I would watch. I remember Will Edgington from Sacramento worked with Tony the Tiger Lopez. I would sit in the back of the dressing room and watch his technique because nobody would teach you. And then I would try my own and all that. And but finally, I wrap my own hands. I learned the basics watching them, not asking, but just.
I think people got to remember this is before YouTube.
Yeah,
right? Like I'm sure you have YouTube videos out there on how to wrap hands,
Yeah.
There's so many. So, sometimes when we explain things to people listening, they're like, What do you mean? Just video it. And you're like, yo, bro, there was no, you didn't have one of these to
No.
just like shoot towards the cat, you know, towards the person wrapping hands.
That's a good point. I did it through observation, the technique.
Right.
I would wrap my own hands and get on the bag and punch and go through all that. And some were too tight, too loose. And I learned how to work. So I learned how to wrap hands and in kickboxing, right? And I worked with Javier Mendez when he was a fighter, worked with him and, you know, other guys. And but then working cuts because I had kickboxers. And then we went international. I had fighters who went international, but cuts were, you know, they were going to happen.
Elbows, knees, yeah, of course.
But once again, I had to learn by watching, like everybody else, right? Whether it was right or wrong. Well, anyway, I remember I went to a boxing event. Bone Crusher Smith fought Marvis Frazier, Joe Frazier's son, Richmond, California, and it was boxing, right? And I was learning to be a cut man in my own school of kickboxing, but this guy did a nice job on the cuts. And I went over there and asked him. I said, "Look, you know, I'm trying to learn to be a cut man. Can you tell me what you did?" He says, "Fuck you. I'm taking this to my grave and you got to learn like me." And he walked away. And man, I felt about this big, Elliot. And I said, you know what? That was cold, bro. You know, so I had to learn on my own. Yeah, literally. So now I go back to open with Andre Ward when he was the world champ. And, you know, I tell this story hundreds of times, but I've never thrown his name out. But when I went back to open with Andre Ward, that's where we were from, right? Him and his son now want to take a picture of me because I kind of went up a little bit in the exposure factors. And
right.
So I put my arms around him and mentally I told myself, I won this battle. You know?
Yeah.
He just encouraged me to continue going forward.
You used that adversity as it didn't happen. You know, I put out these little short hitters, these little motivational things. And the one today was nothing happens to you. Everything happens for you. And if you can have that mindset, you actually have a chance of making it, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, one big drive for me as a motivation mentally is I grew up as a farm worker. So, I mean, I picked peaches, tomatoes, cotton, apricots, everything, what I did all my life, right? So our family have always told ourselves if we screw up, we could always go and pick tomatoes, peaches, cotton, and all that shit. So that's a fallback that we have mentally, but that's the one that gives us our strength to keep going forward.
Right, so, man. Yeah, I can always do that. So let's go take the risk.
Yeah, I know I can do that. And then times I tell myself, well, shit, can't kick my ass.
Yeah.
You know, that I know. How many times have you said that? Can't kick my ass.
Can't. Yeah, after fighting, you know, Fight Club got this right. After fighting, everything else gets the volume turned down.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So man, so you get in the UFC, and then one of the things that you did so well was marketing yourself. You know, you created that brand, One More Round. Tell me what that was about for you.
You know, everything that has happened to me in my whole career, Elliot, from day one till now, I've never asked for one job, man. I'm just a proud Mexican that just can't kiss anybody's ass. It's not my nature. Mm-hmm. I like to go through performance, I guess, you know, and I just can't, you know. But yeah, it started. It wasn't easy. It was a long road, and you know, they say Dana brought me in and changed me, but at that time, sponsors were in. I think my first one was Tap Out.
Right.
And Tap Out, I remember at that point, gave me a T-shirt. I didn't know what MMA was, bro. I knew nothing about the ground game or anything like that. But Tap Out, through a friend, gave me a T-shirt. And actually, Scrape is the one that, not Scrape, not Punk Ass.
Mask.
Mask is the one that created Charles. He created the vest for me. And it became what everybody uses now.
Right.
And what I would do is, as a promo with them, is after a fight, I would give it to a fan, sign it, give it to a fan. And, you know, Big John has one, and I think he's raffled it off now when he moved. But, yeah, so that's what we did. And then One More Round, the way that happened is Mark Zucker was looking, the owner of One More Round. He also owned BC Ethics. He was looking at Balboa, Rocky Balboa, when Rocky fought his last fight, where Rocky is saying, yeah, I got to go that one more round, right? And he thought, damn, you know, you were talking about that earlier, where everybody in life has to go that one more round, you know, whatever the situation is, go that one more round. And he decided, he sponsored Matt Hughes. And Matt Hughes is the one that told Mark, I said, look, if anybody gives a fighter one more round is Stitch. So he got a hold of me and he sponsored me. But let me see how this. I'll tell you how this falls in place. I was in Balboa. I played. I was in that.
You were the Cutman. Yeah, I remember.
For Antonio Mason the Lion Dixon.
Yeah.
And that's just how my life works, man. I mean, I tell you, it's just they're all puzzles that are being put together for a super platform. But that's how. And people till this time thought it was my company. They still yell out, "Stitch, one more round. Give the fighter one more round." You brought it up, right? And so I worked with these YouTubers, KSI when he fought Logan Paul. And Mark Zucker, I hadn't spoken to Mark in years, bro. You know, when all this broke off and UFC took away the sponsor. Anyway, all that time. But his son talked him into watching the fights, and he sees me, and he contacts me. And we hooked up again, and we were starting to relaunch one more round, and then this pandemic kicked in. But the Tyson Fury, the outfits that I have for the Tyson Fury fight, Mark created them for me. And the fights that I do for Top Rank, Mark's the one that created the jackets for me. So we're still in touch. But yeah, the people thought it was my company.
So it's not your company. I didn't know that either.
No.
You were just sponsored by them.
I was sponsored by him. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Now you had a falling out with the UFC. You know, not a falling out. Like you held your ground, and it was very. No one does that with the UFC, right? Very few people. Because they're the big dogs.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was pretty positive, bro. I'm telling you, we'll talk friends as friends, fighters that I've worked with, know your heart and all that. But, I used to work on sponsors. I needed the UFC. What the UFC was paying us was nothing compared to what we get at boxing. They understood that.
Right.
But I needed the UFC to make my money through sponsors, right? So I took it, but every time I would get a sponsor, Science, Bad Boy, Tap Out, One More Round, all these companies would come to me. I would negotiate for myself, being that I had the experience working with RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company. So I had that corporate experience to negotiate for myself. And at this point, I'm my own agent, so to speak.
Okay.
But I would negotiate for myself, and then I would, how about House and Leon? Let's put the patch, let's get the billboard effect, and let's put the patches on them, and don't pay them what you pay me, but Leon bought a Cadillac, bro.
Sure.
And so that's what I did. And then, then they took the sponsors away. Of course, everybody knew that, right? And the fighters first. They notified the fighters, and everybody's hating it. And then Mike Mersch contacts us, and the attorney, and he gets all the Cutmen together in Las Vegas for lunch, and tells us that we can't have no more sponsors. So, we're all, so I try to negotiate, all right, how about an increase in pay, some compensation, and there's no money in the kitty. It's all right. So I went home, and that was like in November, I think, when they did or something like that. But at that point, I already told myself, I can't stay with them. I can't. Economically, it doesn't make sense for me. So I can already have that in my mind a little bit, Elliot. But then all this stuff is going on with John Nash from Bloody Elbow calls and asked me if I'd be interested in doing an interview how the Reebok deal affected the Cutman. So going back to when I was a farm worker, my parents fought for the rights with Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez is our Martin Luther King. He's the one who fought for our rights for fair practices and fair pay. So my parents were in that movement and all that. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? It's kind of like the same scenario. If I don't speak up for what's right, they wouldn't be proud of me. So being that I worked with RJ Reynolds, I knew how to be corporate correct. And a lot of the people that did interviews with me said, I read the article, and you said nothing wrong, but I was politically, I presented it in a way where I said, now I got to concentrate more on boxing. But that shit went viral, man, and my wife and I are at Costco, and I'm getting messages from everybody. Dad, thank you for thumbs up and everything. And my wife and I are shopping at Costco, and I get a call from the staff, my friends. They're all friends, right? And they asked if I could talk. I said, no, call me in an hour. So an hour later, man, they call, and you know them both, but I'm not going to throw their names out. It's not important. And one of them, his voice is cracking, and the only thing they said is, right here where I'm sitting at, same spot, is because of the interview you did about Reebok, the UFC is not going to use you no more. And boom, kind of like a shot. And I said, all right, kept my composure. I said, well, do me a favor. You tell Dana, I said, he ain't got no balls, that he should have called me personally since he's the one that brought me in. So I left it at that, and I'm getting messages, Elliot, tons of follow support. And the first text that I read is, now I know the guy's name is David Estrada. I respond back to him. I said, look, I want you to be the first to know. UFC let me go for speaking out about the Reebok deal. Now I got to find a new job. And man, that shit blew up. That went viral. And man, in 1 week, I did like 57 interviews. I had camera crews coming to my house and all that stuff. It was insane. There was a Robbie LeBlanc had a friend of mine as Motivational Monday that he does on Facebook. And I'm sitting right here and I'm looking at, and his thing on Motivational Monday for that day, he says, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Stitch Duran, spoke up for what was right and all that and lost his job with the UFC and all that. So he started going into that. Bro, I started crying. Just that, all that energy, that support, that love that I got was overwhelming. And I remember I was going to the Mandalay Bay with to do an interview at MMA Junkie Radio. And Robin Offner, the owner of Bad Boy. And I'm in the back seat because I'm getting all these messages, right? I'm in the back seat. My son's driving. My wife's in the passenger seat. And Robin Offner, the owner of Bad Boy, calls and says, look, man, what we're going to do is we want to create a shirt to support you, and then all the proceeds go to you. Man, once again, like a baby, I started crying. You know, just all that love. And
you can see it because you touch people's lives.
Yes. And, you know, it's been, 7 years or something like that now, Elliot? But I always get stopped. I always get complimented. Guy the other day went like this. One of the best compliments I've gotten, I mean, Wesley Snipes, when I was at the premiere for Creed, comes up to me and shakes my hand and says, hey, man, the UFC did you wrong. That's what he said. But you remember, Luis, I don't know if you remember, one of Anderson Silva's trainers.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing the bubble for Top Rank here at the MGM about 3 months ago. And he was working with a Brazilian boxer. And we're at lunch and we're at the table and he comes up to me and he says, Fish, we, the coaches, the fighters, we want to thank you for speaking up because we couldn't.
Yeah.
That said it all.
That was going to be my next thing to you is we couldn't. We had no power, right? Like there was no free, like when the Reebok deal came and all of that and, you know, all these things, there was no free agency. And just now there's starting to be some free agency in a little bit in MMA where it's like actually competitive, right? Like, so, like, you know, for example, that was a big thing with all pro sports is that there had to be free agency, like between the teams, right? Like the owner of the team couldn't just hold you hostage forever. Contracts had to end. And then you could go to another team and say, yo, what do you think? And that's a big thing. We still really can't do that too much. It's starting to be. So yeah, that's why it's like, fuck yeah, man. Thank you.
Yeah, George St. Pierre. I mean, listen, I do a lot of these YouTube fights, these high-end fights like this. George St. Pierre with Oscar De La Hoya would have been great for the exhibition. Dana says he can't do it, you know.
What do you think of all that? Like, because Jesus Christ, man, like Logan Paul.
Bro, you know.
Yeah, but they're making money.
Yeah, no, hey, I'm making money working with them.
Right. Yeah. I know. So what do you think about the whole thing where, you know, like that, are the Paul brothers really showing the world how much money there is out there for the fighters? And, you know, is it going to do anything? You know, is the UFC going to have to pay up? What do you think?
Well, yeah, they are doing a good job and they are bringing up these in the forefront as loud as anybody could do it. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, UFC is corporate. They're a corporate company and they don't bend to these types of situations. I know I've worked corporate America. They'll take the bullet as long as they can, just, you know, bob and weave, but economically they'll still keep a positive note. So I don't expect that, but the reality is the reality, you know, and if you're going to, you know, not get, if these guys are, UFC, fighters get 18, 20% of everything, every other sports, like 49, 50, 51.
No one's under 50.
Yeah, someone says something's wrong with that program, and as you know, unfortunately, they're independent contractors. You know, everybody, and I know there was guys, even Leslie Smith, that try to get things going, but nobody wants to step in.
Man, shit too. The thing with that 18%, I know when I was fighting, it was 7.2% is what we got. And but to really understand that 7.2, the top 10 guys got 6.9 of that 7.2. Right. So you're looking at the other guys splitting 0.3%.
Yeah.
You know, and it's still very similar now, right? You know, where the top tier guys, and look, I'm not saying they don't deserve it.
Right.
Like they without a doubt deserve every penny they're making. The other piece of that is the pie needs to be bigger so that you can't have people fucking fighters putting GoFundMe out to get through camp, right? Like that's fucking sad. I can see maybe if you're not in the UFC yet and you're like trying to make it, but once you have a UFC fight, man, shit, you should be able to get through a couple camps now without needing some money.
Yeah, that's really a shame. And it has to get better for you guys.
It does. Well, not me anymore. I'm done, man. I'm an old man. I know. I just fight with my wife and lose all the time, Stitch.
And it's during that episode of them letting me go. Even the guy from Reebok called me, Mike, and he said, "Hey, man, Stitch, just want to let you know we had nothing to do with that. You're a good guy and this and that. It's okay. I understand. But and you're talking about in those early days. I mean, even right now, the Cutmen are getting paid not what they deserve for that caliber of work that they're doing.
Right.
These are world championship fights that they're working, and they should be compensated more than they are. And but the ring girls,
everything, man. When the UFC sold for, I don't know, what was it, $4 billion? Everyone was like, "Whoa, yo, what the fuck?" Yeah. That was a massive.
It's massive. I remember Dana said when I started, because we were early in the game, bro.
Yeah.
I think maybe they had 12 employees, but he says, as we make money, you make money. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, as we close it up here, man, I always ask two questions to kind of end the podcast, and not super focused on me here. This is more, it kind of sounds like me, but I don't want it to be Elliot focused. Yeah. Man, you are a celebrity. You get to work the highest level caliber of fights. You get to work with world champions like, you work with Andre Ward, you're working with the Klitschko brothers, you're working with, I think Tyson Fury right now, right? You're like, yo, I can do, and you said to me, look, I can do the podcast as long as Tyson doesn't have to spar at that time. Yeah. And like, man, I was like, damn, man, that's fucking cool. So, but why even bother with like, you gave me a lot of compliments, like, but I'm not that level, and I never was that level, right? I was like a middle of the road fighter that, very few people, why bother to come on this podcast? It's not really going to do anything for you, right? Like it's not going to build your brand or do anything. I like to hear like the reason behind people who are above me in stature, let's say, and touch of the world, like their platform. Why do they go on lower platforms to help out?
It's kind of not even giving you the compliment that you deserve when you put them in lower platforms. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I get more TV time than you. Bottom line.
Yeah, for sure.
7 movies. Bottom line. I got all that shit. Hey, listen, I'm blessed. I'm telling you. But when Elliot, when you got a hold of me, of course, it's more. I get BJ Penn said it best. It's talking stories.
Yeah.
And to me, talking stories is one thing, but to talk to a guy that's actually been in the fire, and I've been there with you. Like I say, I talk about the heart and soul of the fighters, but usually I can't tell it to the fighters don't give me. You see that relationship? So I get to get information from you that I haven't gotten, but I knew that it was coming. I know what your feelings are whenever somebody like me works on you, because we're not there to bullshit you. We're there to take care of you. So I get to hear that from you, and that's why you should never declassify yourself in status. Listen, you got a podcast, I don't. So what?
No, I totally understand what you're saying, but some people, there are people in the world like, that doesn't help my platform, so it doesn't do anything for me. So, all right, if Joe Rogan calls, then okay, I'm going on Rogan. Yeah. But stuff like that.
Nah, you know what it does for me? That energy that I need to go on from today on, just pump me up, bro.
I appreciate it, man.
That's what that is. That's what I get off on. I get off like saying not the fights are gonna happen. I've been blessed. Movies
with or without us, right? They're gonna happen with or without us.
Yeah, exactly. You know, movies are gonna happen and all that, but what do I do in between? You know, well, shoot, let me talk to somebody that's been in the trenches. You know, I done armed forces entertainment tours with UFC fighters, with MMA junkie Georgian goals, and but I went to Afghanistan, and just to see these guys in the trenches, right in the bush, and you know, these guys are the true life gladiators that give up their lives. You guys are true life gladiators that do it for a sport, but your life depends on it. Right. So that respect factor that I see with both you guys as gladiators, you guys are modern day gladiators, bro.
Well, we appreciate it, man. The last question I'd like to ask, I believe everyone has a unique power in the world, something in the world that makes them, right? That they go and they give it to the world. They do it not even necessarily for money. You know, they do it because it's who they are. What is your power? What is that thing that makes Stitch Stitch?
You know, I think I respect everybody at the same level because, you know, I never forget where I come from. Like I say, I have Planada, my hometown. That's not so the world can know what Planada is. It's for the 1,500 people of Planada to know I'm there to support them. And they're all farm workers, right? But just showing respect to people, man, and being honest with them. And, you know, in closing, I'll give you a story why I'll just support what I do, why I know it's the right thing is before I've been in Vegas 26 years. Before I came here for boxing. Don King had a show, and I had a fighter on there. But my three brothers were here, and we went to the after fight party, and we're talking. You remember Randall Cunningham?
Oh yeah, Philly quarterback from Philadelphia Eagles, baby, number 7, number 12.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
All right, yeah. So me and my three brothers, I'm still Jacob, bro. I'm not even Stitch, you know. I'm still Jacob, and we're talking to Randall Cunningham, and one of Don King's guys comes up to him and taps him and says, "Hey man, I need to talk to you." He says, "Hold on, let me finish talking to these guys." Bro, I never felt so important in my whole life, man, and that's the energy I want to project. Now he's a pastor here in Las Vegas. He has a church and everything. I've never met him, but when I meet him, I'm going to relay that story that he just reinforced that that's the way we should live with everybody.
Hell yeah, there ain't nobody different, right? Like you were saying, platform, no platform. You know, $10 million or $10.
You know, and it's all, I guess, like in my position. In fact, Georgian goals, when we went to Afghanistan, General Frost, we had met. Well, he was in town last week, so I went over there and met with him. Well, this guy, I wrapped his hands in front of the big assembly, right? And he's just cocky as shit, you know, big old ass guy. I wrapped his hands, bro, and his chest got this much bigger, you know, because he got as close to being a fighter by wrapping his hands. He ended up sending me an 8x10 autographed picture, bro. So you know, that's what I'm saying. That's what you guys. Everybody wants to be you, but not everybody can.
Yeah, everybody thinks they want to be us until it's time to fucking make the walk. You know. So, guys, man, you know who he is. It's Stitch Duran. Go find him. He's everywhere. You see him everywhere. I want to say thank you for coming on, Stitch. You know, I know you're a busy dude. You know, you're gonna go deal with the champ right now, Tyson Fury. And man, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing the stories. Thanks for letting everyone peek into your world a little bit and what that behind the scenes is like. So, as always, everyone, don't go out in the world and try to be Stitch. Stitch has his unique power, the thing that makes him him. And I got my unique power, that thing that makes me me. It's cool. Everyone has that power. Go out there and find your power.